Hello, hi. How are you all? Happy Sunday. So today, Jon Velie, who is the owner of Online Visa Sync and Velie Law Firm, will be joining us and addressing a lot of questions regarding H1B. So I'm gonna take him pretty soon to our live. Stay tuned. In the meantime, please add your questions. Please shoot your questions so that we can address them. I will first add my co-host Ram, and then we'll go to John. We'll add John as well. Ram, he will be joining pretty soon. Hey Ram, please join. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of questions about masters. We'll address them in further sessions. So in this live, we're gonna pretty much talk about visas. Hey Ram.
Hi Ravi.
Yeah, is everything good now?
Good.
Okay. Let me send an invite to John. Hey John, I'm sending an invite. Please bear with me. Okay. John, I just sent an invite. Ram, we're getting some disturbance from your side. Can you please fix it?
There's nothing here.
Okay. Getting some resound. Okay. I'm gonna send an invite to John on his personal account. All right. Hey John, I just sent an invite to you.
Oh, is it?
Hey, he's here.
Yeah.
Hi John.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi John, how are you?
Doing great.
All good, all good.
Yeah. I'm excited
Happy
to
Sunday.
be. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Had your lunch?
Had a nice lunch.
Yes, sir. Good to
How's
hear.
the weather in Norman?
It's pretty good today. You know, this is probably the nicest day we've had in a little bit. Feelings of spring.
Nice.
But yeah.
Sorry to bother you on Sunday.
Oh no,
I know
it's
you're
pleasure.
pretty busy. Yeah.
Well, I think.
All right. So I'd just like to introduce a bit about John. Hey guys, so John joined us. So you're seeing him, the man himself, who is the owner of Online Visa Sync and also the owner of Velie Law Firm. He has experience for more than 3 decades. For more than 30 years, he is practicing in immigration, and he's one of the litigation attorney who brought a lot of changes in systematic procedures done by USCIS. So one among many attorneys who is most popular in the United States, and he also do visas. It relates to many things, whether it is sports or else an actor or else EB1, IEPs, O1, whatnot. He's experienced in many things, and he helped a lot of people, a lot of employers, a lot of employees. So he's the one who we need to deal with and work with, and we felt that, and lucky to have we have some mutual connections, and we approached to John, and he accepted to join us and address some questions to our community. And welcome, John.
Thank you.
It's our honor.
It's my honor's all mine. It's such a pleasure to be on this great account that you guys have with all these wonderful people. It's really neat what you're doing to get the word out across so many different platforms and become such an educated source of knowledge and entertainment.
Right. Thank you very much, John. You know, a lot of hundreds of thousands of people come from India every year, and many people into tech jobs or STEM jobs. They work hard and work through this H1Bs, and some people will get some right direction or some right mentorship to be successful with their visa journey and to fulfill their dreams, American dreams. And some people will not get. It depends upon the right attorney and the right corporate. So pretty much, I think you will be the solution for many things.
Well, I hope so.
So yeah, so probably we'll get started.
Great.
Are you ready?
I am. I'd like to say one thing before we get in that resonates with what you said. One is at our firm, every morning we have a meeting, and we end it with 1, 2, 3, and then our motto, delivering dreams. The reason that we, use that motto in delivering dreams is that we know that behind every form and disinterested government employee that may look at it or the package we put together is a human or a number of humans, right? Like the owner of the company or the beneficiary that comes over, and there's a dream associated with that. And I'm glad you say that because that's how we look at it. The other thing, when I was in India, we have an office in Hyderabad, and we represent lots of Indians in both the tech sector and in the EB5 investment sector and some athletes. But what we've noticed that is really cool, and when I was over there speaking at some universities, is that there's a movement going on, and it's a really interesting movement. And I'm not sure that most Americans understand it, and I'm not even sure that the numerous Indian techies and others in the industry really understand what's going on. But this is really the largest, most mobile and educated workforce to ever move around the world, and it's happening right now, and it's really fun to be part of it and to see that going on. And what's really interesting about this workforce is that with these sort of numbers in the past in the United States, the workforce is coming at the bottom of the economy, right? At the worst was slavery. We had Europeans coming into factories. We had Chinese that were coming in to build railroads. But those were really folks at the very, very bottom of the economic scale. With India, it's the top. Even either coming in as a college student, which is not really in the economy, but then into the H1B, coming into six-figure jobs, and then many going out and becoming entrepreneurs, investors, and things like that. And it's really been neat to see that flow and to go back and forth between the countries, to see that connection between the two largest democracies in the world, and a really special thing going on. So we're really happy to be involved in that, and finding a great deal of pleasure and success in it.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Great to hear. So I will keep shooting the questions as most people are suffering with. So first thing is like RFEs. People go to India once they get their approval for stamping to India. Okay. Once we get approval from USCIS itself, our visa is approved. All we need to do is like get our visa stamping done in India, in our home country. So when we go there, I don't know why we are receiving RFEs. For some people, it's like a nightmare to clear that RFE. For some people, it clears in less than few weeks. So how do we deal with it?
So the answer is you got to understand that it's not a just, right? So we have two different agencies here, actually three in the H1B. You have the Department of Labor, who looks at the LCA and determines the prevailing wage. Then you have USCIS that looks at that information, looks at the employee-employer relationship, which is really big when you're talking about staffing companies and third parties. And you're looking at the occupation. And behind every case is it has to be real, right? So what we're seeing that's important is each presidency looks at this a little bit differently. So the Biden administration has one of the highest approvals, probably the highest approval ratings ever, much higher than Obama and very much higher than Trump. However, there's a big investigation arm, and I probably started under Trump, but they're well funded and they look at that. So I call it the site visit is the new RFE, but adding the site visit is the consulate appointment. The consulate's the Department of State. That's not USCIS.
Right.
USCIS was the subject to some litigation in 2020 called IT Serve Alliance, and about 4 other cases that changed it. And one of the things that the consulates have said is, well, we're not subject to that. We're not USCIS. So where that's breaking down is on third-party documentation, right? And so what H1Bs are built on the concept, which remains on USCIS, that the work must exist at the time of filing the petition. So if USCIS approves it and they go to the consulate and they don't know where they're going to work, or it's different than what it says in their petition, it can break down there. They get to re-adjudicate it. It is their obligation and duties. The second thing is that they're underemployed right now. COVID didn't just hurt companies. It really shut down and slowed down the U.S. government, particularly the consulates, and particularly in big country populations like India. So the 212G might be because they're re-adjudicating it and they don't think that there is a real project or work there, even though USCIS approved it. The second is they just don't have enough people. So they're punting it back to the USCIS to adjudicate it from afar and come back, and it's slowing up. And there's not a lot of consistency there. So you don't know that's why they're doing it or not. And you can't do much other than trying to email communicate with the consulate. And if you do it too much, if you're nervous and you keep asking them, it works against you. They're like, well, I'm not going to deal with this guy. People think the more I ask them, the more likely they'll help them. But they're like, I'm tired of this guy. I'm not going to respond anymore. And then they die on the vine sometimes. So that's some insight around it. I'm not sure that helps anybody, but it does explain kind of why it is hard.
Understood.
So John, what's the alternative, like other than waiting for a long time? So what's the alternative? Like I heard some
that's a great question.
Second slots, and
that's a great question. So litigation has come there, and there are some folks doing this litigation, friends of ours, that are doing it on a fairly inexpensive way. And if you look at that cost, saying I'm going to sue them because there's no real basis for it, right? Then that's when the squeaky wheel gets the, what they call it, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you're suing them because they haven't made a decision, and it's forcing them to make decisions. So in many of those cases, if there's not something else wrong with it, they're reopening the case and they're approving them. So think of it like this. You're going up the chain in this decision-making process. Now, consular decisions are very discretionary, meaning that they can kind of do what they want to do. Where you have help is when they're not making a decision. And we're seeing some folks have some success when they litigate good cases that they get reopened and done that way. Before you do that, you could get a congressional person to step in. They won't step in prior to what they think is outside the typical processing times, right? So, we know when those are, and we talk to these folks, and they'll send it in. They'll say typical processing times are X amount of days, and then you talk to the congressman, you fill out what's called a privacy release. They then have a staffer. That staffer then communicates with the State Department or USCIS, depending on who it is, and then they find out what's up, and they'll tell you. And sometimes that'll knock it off high center. The third way, and probably the first thing to do, is to reach out, especially through an attorney, to the consulate and find out if there's anything that can be produced or done to fix it. The fourth is, and this is the big picture, is this part of a company being investigated for something else, right? That goes back to what I was telling you about. There's so much investigation going on that it's funny to me, some of the companies don't understand when you have somebody doing a site visit or emailing you questions, that it slows up these other things. They're connected, right? They talk to each other, and they'll slow it up while they're trying to figure that out. We have one right now, just an example of where it's an in-house project, right? And so when the investigator came, they didn't have counsel at the time. They just gave him a couple of things that they had put in the underlying petition. Well, that petition went in March of 2022, right? And that's a long time ago, almost a year ago. And it didn't occur to them that something may have happened since then. So the investigator basically said, I don't think it's real. So we came in, we got all their information from, their project plan, to their sprints to, you know, GitHub and Jira sort of communication on the project, and actually screenshots and some code snippets, right?
Right.
And so we're going back to the adjudicator saying, we've conducted our own investigation. Here's what we found. We think you'll agree with us that it's real.
Right.
So we're not pushing back on them. We're not telling them what to do. We're telling them we're looking at it too. And we hope that will then, you know, cut the block of all the 212Gs that are happening to the company trying to bring you guys over.
Right. Right. So before going to the following question, I just wanted to announce something like, so John has 2 offices, Online Visas and Velie Law. So they do do free consulting of 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, if you feel like from this session, if we did not got a chance to answer your question, feel free to reach out to them. Feel free to create an appointment with them. It's a free 30-minute consultation. You can talk with the expert attorneys and take their decisions. From there, you can work on your case with the law firm. And especially John will step onto your case and he will deal with it if needed. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And for, besides the individuals, we'll do strategies for companies. H1B season is coming up, and we've developed a platform called visas.ai. Online Visas owns that platform. And at visas.ai, we do a strategy consultation in which we'll invite whoever we do that strategy into the database, so they can go in and see what that is and carry it away. And we're doing it for a lot of companies right now to see, you know, what are their issues, right? Are they big enough? Do they have enough employees? They're talking about these types of projects. What do I do about this? What do I do about that? It's really a smart time to do that before we get into the push of registrations in March and obviously filings in April and May and June.
Right. I also heard that you streamlined the process and cut down the cost of application.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're really scaling, and we have, right? So while I've done this for 30 years, we used to say that we did more work than anybody because we write a brief, right? So basically what we try to do is identify issues that will be in an RFE up front and answer it. And that's why we had 100% approval the last 2 years, is because if we see something that they'll see, right? We respect the fact that they'll see it too. And we say, we know you're going to have a concern with this or this, and then we'll answer it. That gives us a second bite at the apple if they do give us an RFE, right? And many times it removes it. Now, I can't guarantee we won't get any RFEs. We do. But that's just because they just issue them anyway. But what we've done is eliminated them and made them less dangerous sometimes, right? And then that helps. So that's that process that builds the brief. It also builds all sorts of other documents, employment letters if you need them, the offer letters. We work with experts, but we can build the expert letters. All of that comes out of our platform, and then assembles the entire petition, and we upload that into the portal where they can see it all, right? So it's more transparent, it is faster, and it is better.
Right. And also heard that you have been working on AI for years to build this product. So ChatGPT is like latest sensation. How did you sense it? Well, like AI with immigration. So it's really a wonderful job from your side.
Well, thank you. I was in Hyderabad for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in 2017. I had been, it was funny, I was invited by the Obama administration for 2016 in Palo Alto. That was really cool because I saw a couple of guys that I always wanted to talk to, right? So there was the guy that founded Airbnb and the guy that had founded, I think, LinkedIn. And I listened to him and it really resonated that we should build a community like LinkedIn, and we should use the model like Airbnb so we can scale. Like there's other really big law firms that have hundreds of offices and thousands of employees that they have to put in one location. But Airbnb, you know, could onboard 1,000 places to stay without building anything, right? So by building a platform that allows us to communicate with our clients, with other attorneys and stuff like that, we can be everywhere and anywhere and have better quality. So that was the idea there. So the next year I go over to Hyderabad for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. Ivanka Trump's there, Modi's there. And I went with one of my clients and friends, and we were listening to the CEO of IBM. And she started talking about the commoditization of AI, right? Like AI has been around since the 50s, but you had to have a supercomputer in a room the size of a building. And so with, you know, Siri and all these other kind of speaking to AI components, those are now sold in chunks, right? They've commoditized it. So we said, look, we need to have AI in law, and we need to be able to change the way that lawyers identify issues and when they go look for it, because if we can deliver it to them where they can make decisions, you can't replace them, but they can make decisions, then they're going to make them quicker and they're going to make them cheaper, right? So that was 2017. We've been working on it. So when ChatGPT dropped, you know, our AI architects who follow this other said, hey, this revolutionizes AI. And what that is generative AI, right? So that is, it writes really well. But the problem with ChatGPT right now is that it's like your smartest friend that can talk about everything or anything, but doesn't know anything, right? So they wouldn't be successful because they're saying words, but they're not saying the right words. And law is precise and it needs to update all the time, right? So what we're doing is then taking generative AI, which is writing well, and then helping it act like it thinks like a lawyer, right? And giving to lawyers the things they need to know to make quick decisions. So that's where we are on it, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
John,
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it was a cool product. So last time you gave us a small demo, and it was generating some automated answers also.
Yeah.
So who all can access that onlinevisas.ai? Like how to access that?
Well, our clients
to be a client.
our clients are, you know, we do visas. We build visas in the process. It's a visa builder, right? So what's different about our product than the others that are out there, those are built by techies trying to imagine what lawyers needed. And this is my third generation, and I kept finding out that it just isn't doing what we really needed to do. Whoever's trying to imagine it is imagining it outside the nuances of the industry. So this is really built by lawyers with techies instead of built by techies for lawyers. And because of that, it teaches our lawyers and our team to be better lawyers, right? So we are allowing other attorneys to license it, but we're also using it for our clients in Velie Law to do it. And it was able to help us last year. You know, we did 70 H1Bs in a day, right? And never could have done that without this platform. And we're able to do it with a lot of people that weren't sitting in the same office together. And the coolest thing on those 70 in that day, we found 14 that would have been denied because of errors. And I think the more manual way, they would have just put them in and they would have been denied, right? Because we had this more automated way, we were able to catch them. And I was the most proud of that, actually.
Awesome. Keep doing.
Thank you.
Wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
It. And
fun to talk about.
So thank you. So going back to questions again. Coming to the RFE, so we heard some stories from our friends that they were stuck with their RFE in India for more than 6 months. Some people stuck in India for more than an year, and they did not hear anything from USCIS or consulate regarding their case. So they were in a situation where they cannot come back to US, or they cannot stay there, and a lot of people lost their jobs.
It's a horrible problem.
Is there any solution? Like some people, you know, like in our case, one of my friend who got delayed for more than 6 months, she took a lead and she got an appointment, in-person appointment, and carried all the documents. Luckily, she got approved this time, though the RFE is pending. So this is doable, or any other approaches you suggest?
Well, the approaches I said before, and I'll reiterate them quickly, are the same ones, right? So that one is the first thing you do, try to get another appointment, and she did. Try to get an expedited appointment. You can try that as well. You can do that with your attorney. You can do it by yourself. The consulate part is usually not really attorney driven until it becomes problematic, right? This is when it becomes problematic.
So it's not like we are not violating anything.
No.
So like, you know, we waited for 6 months. After that, we take a consulate appointment and go to the interview. So it's not like we are violating anything, right?
No, I don't think that's a violation. What to be careful about, though, is what we call forum shopping. They hate that if you get denied in consulate 1 in India, that you go to consulate 2. So you get denied in Hyderabad, so then you go to Delhi, or vice versa. They'll know that, right? And they think you're trying to forum shop, and they don't like that. So you got to kind of know what they like. So I would suggest working with an attorney before making guessing moves on that, because we have more data points. We see this stuff all the time, and we know, you know what, I've emailed them 7 times today. Worst thing you can do. They hate it, right? They don't work for us, and they don't think that they work for us, right? They think that they're patriots doing their job to keep out, you know, terrorists of America, right? They're wrapped in the flag. They're very official, and some of them are grumpy, right? And so I look at it like this: it's like they're never wrong. It's like talking to your grandmother. Your grandmother's never wrong. No matter if she's wrong, she's not wrong. And you have to talk to her with a respect, or you know, or it didn't work, right? So the same thing with consulate officials, right? They're not wrong. They have all the decision making and discretion in their hands. So you got to be polite. You can't yell at them, and you can't ask 50 things of them. But what you brought up was processing times. When it goes past processing times, when it's past the norm, what do you do? So when we talked about it earlier, I like that. You try to do it yourself. You try to expedite it. You contact a lawyer. The lawyer contacts them. You contact the congressman. The congressman contacts them. There's nothing happening there. Then you sue them. Right? Those are the channels. Right? And so that's all the way up from the least to the most. But filing a lawsuit might be the thing to do if it's been a year and you're going to lose your job. If you don't, no risk. Right? I mean, they'll tell you whether or not they're looking at. Well, they won't tell you if they're looking at something that they take very, very seriously, right? They will not divulge that they think the person's a terrorist. They just won't say anything. And they won't say it to the congressman either. And I had that with an EB-5 from an Egyptian guy. Somebody had spread a rumor about him. So, and he knew it. He said, "No, these guys spread a rumor about me." The funny thing is, this guy was a builder. He actually built the housing for the people at the consulate, right? But it took about 4 years. And we had a senator go in, and they couldn't find out anything. And in this one day, it resolved. And that was them going through to find out if this guy was a terrorist. He wasn't. It was just a rumor. It wasn't founded. They let him in. He now has an EB-5 in the United States. So.
Got it. So this time I would like to have a question which is employer centric.
Okay.
So these days, many people are getting into IT business and starting their IT consulting firms. Okay. So though they have some knowledge, not everyone will have a lot of exposure how to run the business. Right. Some people think that they can run an office just having a guest house with a virtual office space.
You're right.
Okay. So, but as per H1B, as per USCIS, we need to have a physical location of office space for filing H1B. Is there any limitation of the size of the office, like 200 SFT or 50 SFT or 2000 SFT? Like, how does it work? How do we determine?
I love the way you ask the questions, because that's exactly how people ask the questions. But you need to know the why, right? You can't, there's not a one size fits all. Here's the question. You do it this way, and you're absolutely right. And what we see is a lot of guys will say, "Well, my friend opened one, and I just did what my friend said." Call an attorney. I mean, this is an important thing. If you're talking about opening up a company and running an operation, get some advice. Most of us know this stuff, and most of us know it really well. And your buddy may know from your buddy's perspective, and your buddy may be doing something that's not sustainable and get in trouble next time. So here's the way to think about it, right? So you never want your your H1B to be your first employee, right? Because you got to fill out an I-129. It's going to ask you what year you were established, how many employees you have, and how much revenue you have. Those are the three things that will be automatic kicks into an RFE or a site investigation, or both, right? So you never, there's a couple of them you can solve. You can't make yourself any older than you are, right? But you can make more revenue, and you can have more employees, and you can have other things besides revenue, right? So for example, you may not have done much revenue, but your founder may be wealthy because he just, exited out of a big startup as a billionaire, or you may have landed 5 or 6 contracts that have values on them. What they're looking about is can this company, is it real, right? It always go back to, is it real? Because that's what they're talking about, fraud. Like, this whole thing's made up. Is it real? But real by itself is not enough. can it sustain itself? Will it stay in business for the length of the time that these visas are being adjudicated? And does it have enough money to pay the prevailing wages of all of the H1B employees? Right. That's how they're thinking about it. Okay. So we've established it's real. Nobody's going to do this if it's not real, but it needs to be big enough. So there's do's and don'ts and shoulds. So don't file an H1B where your first employee is an H1B, right? I mean, you need to have enough of a staff for the H1B workers to work. And that's the deal. Also, don't file one where you don't have an office at all. You can't work it out of your house. It shouldn't even be in anything that looks like a house. I've seen that before. And it really shouldn't be one of those shared office places. Now, there's a difference between never do one without an office and you shouldn't do one with a shared office, because people are getting away with that to a certain extent. But it goes back to, is it real? And then the site investigations that come, right? Okay. So best practices is to have your own office. Okay. Now, you could share that office with another company, but you need to have your own space. Now, the next piece is they're going to look at how many H1Bs do you have? How many did you apply for? And where are they going to work? Okay. So the staffing piece is they're going to work somewhere else. Well, if they're in India, do you know where that's going to be? Because what rules is the LCA. So LCA, you have to have an address, right? So if you're putting the address of the new office you have and say it's one room and you've got 5 people there and they knock on the door and there's no place for 5 people to work, they're not going to approve the visa, right? That's the problem. So there needs to be workspaces if that's where they're going to work. Now, here's some tricks of the trade, right? So during COVID, a lot of places weren't able to bring people in, so they had to come in and out. So what they did is they created defined workspaces for everybody, put a little label of their name, put their job description, title, and stuff like that, the projects they work with, some real evidence that they're working on that project. So if an immigration official came in, it was buttoned up, right? They got to see what it is. So that's kind of how to look at it. Look at the enough square footage to put the people that are going to be on the H1B in the place they're going to be, right? That could segue into other things on the LCA, but I'll turn it over to you for your next question.
Yeah, it's a good one. So the following thing is, like, these days, many people are filing multiple H1Bs. Like, so it has been an issue in some cases, but it's real in some cases. The same guy getting multiple offers and people are taking it as legit and going with multiple employers. But in some cases, people are chasing them and filing more, right?
That's right.
So what are your 2 cents about this? I know USC is trying to bring a lot of changes in it to eliminate the multiple applications, but what is good and what is bad? What are do's and what are don'ts?
Excellent. So it is completely permissible for an H1B beneficiary to have multiple companies apply on his or her behalf, right? And not a bad idea. It opens your risk of, if one gets picked up and one doesn't, then they still have a place they can write. That's okay. That's completely fine. What's not okay is for a company to file more than one on behalf of the same beneficiary, and it'll eliminate both of them, right? Okay. Then it gets a little fuzzier of related companies filing them, right? So how related are they? Are they owned by the exact same owner? That could be a problem. If they're not, if they're different enough, then you could do it that way. You'd say these are different companies and, both of them want them and that sort of stuff. But the related becomes the problem if they think that it is gamed, if it's sort of conceived, and this is what we're trying to do, right? So it's better if they're completely unrelated. Haven't seen people prosecuted for that yet, but I think that's coming. Just in sort of the rhetoric we're hearing. The other thing that hasn't been prosecuted that'll be interesting if it does is that if your company gets an H1B picked up, and remember the companies are filing the registrations, not the individuals. They're all filing them on behalf of individuals. If you win these H1Bs, you're obligated to file it. Now, if the beneficiary says, well, I'm not going with you, from an owner perspective, I would say get it in writing. have the beneficiary say, I am not interested in your job, put it in the file. So then it's off. It's not your job. It's not your fault. What they don't want a company to do is gobble up the H1Bs and then not file them because somebody else could have gotten it, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, but we haven't really seen it prosecuted, but I could see that becoming a problem, and we'll see.
Okay.
Gotcha. So Ram, it's your turn. I have been asking questions.
Recently we got to know some hot news that USCIS is planning to do the pilot project about stamping getting done in USA.
Yeah.
So do you know more details about that, John?
I don't know the details on it, but they're saying they're going to do it, right? So it's designed for H's and L's. It's designed for people to not have to go back to India, right? I think this is the group that it is primarily focused on, which is a good thing, right? That means that this particular administration is not looking at the IT staffing industry as the enemy the way the last administration did, right? They really did. They tried to kill the business model where a company could not file for somebody else and then place that person in a third party. They just didn't like it for whatever reason, even though it's really important. And I think maybe they'll loosen their analysis on it a little bit because it's now more important than it was a couple of years ago. And here's why. The big companies are laying people off, right? And the last time we saw this was 2008, 9, and 10, right? That's when we saw big layoffs.
Thousands of layoffs.
And the entity or the sub-industry that came in to save it were the staffing companies, and those staffing companies are primarily Indian staffing companies, which is what started the IT Serve company in the first place, because in 2010, this memo came out that then started making it harder, right? And so what immigration always gets upset about is numbers, right? So they saw this sub-industry come into town. Instead of saying, yay, they saved the day, they go, I'm not sure we like the way they're doing it, right? And it was that from that 2010 to 2020, right, that 10-year gap is when you start the analysis go harder and harder and harder. And each year, a new surprise. Level 1 wages. None of us ever saw that coming. We'd all been immigration attorneys for a long time. You just had to be above the prevailing wage. Next thing you know, you got to not be a level 1, right? Whatever that meant. It took us a while after the RFEs to dig in and find out they were talking about a 2009 Department of Labor memo. They didn't say that's what they were doing. They were just using terms. So we had to find this out. And it's funny to watch attorneys trying to figure that out. And then so the specialty occupation, that's got narrower and narrower. We used to use a database called ONET. We can't use ONET anymore because they said there's too many non-professional jobs in it. We have to use OOH, right? And then if the OOH doesn't specifically say it, even though it might mention it, doesn't work, right? So that was a reduction of the number of jobs that could work. For a while, you couldn't be a computer programmer, but you could be a computer developer. And I've never met anybody define the difference for me very well, right? They're the same thing. So those are the sort of things that were going on. Maybe we'll see a loosening of some of that because the staffing companies are needed right now. However, I don't think they truly work that way. I don't think they think big picture. I think they think micro pictures. And so where I think the focus for next year is going to be, because one of the things we watched, the Biden administration didn't just kill everything the Trump administration did. They pushed some of it back. One of the two things that they pushed back that could come out sometime in the summer, which would be right in the middle of H1B season, are wages, right? And the reason that they like higher wages is because the Biden administration's, one of its biggest supporting groups are labor unions. Labor unions love green card holders. They want more members, but they don't like H1Bs. They don't like H2Bs. They look at them as undercutting American jobs, even though the sector that we're talking about, there just aren't enough Americans. But they don't look at it like that. They are laser focused on anything with immigration is bad because it's bad on our jobs. So if they can create an artificially high prevailing wage for H1Bs, then there'll be less H1Bs, especially in the staffing sector, because they won't be able to make the margins, right? It'll cost them more money to pay somebody than they'll get. And so I'm afraid that may be coming. and we'll have to push and lobby against it. And we will, right? There'll be lots of people saying crazy for doing that, but that's one of the fights we may see coming down. And the other is the employer-employee relationship, which we won in the IT Serve case, that we don't need to have third-party contracts between third-party letters anymore, right? Our strategy is to create project plans. A project plan is in the voice or the language or from the letterhead of the employer, not from the third party. Here's why I have work for my employees, right? Based on his history, based on this, based on that, but it's not, here's this contract that you get to see, right? So those where our battles are going to be this year, we think.
Gotcha. Okay. So another question is like, probably this is like one of the most challenging question for you. I don't know how you're going to take it, but nowadays with the evolving social media, many people have different interests like dancing, acting, and are providing some different content, informational content, and surprisingly, these platforms allowing the creators to monetize and giving money.
Yeah.
Like say Instagram is giving money for the content creators for doing some dance, for acting, and Facebook is doing, and YouTube is doing, right? So people are just accepting. It's not like my day job. It's like I'm just pursuing my passion, and they're paying a little bit like $100 or $200 or $300, and they're making that side gig. And people really don't know if they can make it or not. And we were not aware, if at all, is it legal or illegal. So if people keep continuing it and take some money from Meta or whatever it is, will that create any problem in the future? Probably by the time of green card, or probably by the time of H1B extensions, or else, as long as is that fine as long as we pay the taxes to IRS on time for the money we receive. So what is your take on it, and is there any solution for this?
So it would come up in both the green card, because in the green card, you would have to show your taxes, right? And in those taxes, if there's income and you're on an H1B that's from outside that H1B company, they're going to ask you the unanswerable questions in the adjustment of status component of that case. How are you authorized to work for whoever that payer was, right? Because they're going to 1099 you, and they're going to send you that. And the reality is, just because it's your passion, and even if you're not getting paid for it, right? You can't, if it's work and you weren't authorized to work in that capacity, then you're not in status. That's the difficulty, right? And they would deny your adjustment of status, and they will say that you've been out of status since that first time you got paid. And if it was more than a year or more than even a half a year, there's a bar that's in there. So it's a really difficult situation, right? That's why, you know, if you can make good money out of it, right? If it can be a career, I'd suggest using the IEP. If you're just getting into it, if you can raise money on this, or the O, if you're really good. But the problem of the O is that where did you get really good at it, right? Now, if you can say I got really good at this and I made my achievements in India or Canada or some other place, then you can use all that evidence. But if all of the success that you're having was in the United States, now you're shining a spotlight on, look what I did in the United States without authorization to do it. So if you put in that O visa, you could get an RFE saying, I see all this evidence is very impressive. However, you know, how are you legal to do that, right? Also an unanswerable question. So it's a real problem. And that's, you know, and we represent a number of influencers right now that are coming from other countries, and we're doing H1B visas for them. And they just did a clarification on the H1B, which is really helpful, I think. And that is to indicate how they starred and were starring and things like that. So the H1B is not the hardest and highest standard to be. The problem would be, where did you get successes for that to authorize that? And that's the difficulty. But with the IEP, it's about raising money, right? Can you raise over $267,000 from an experienced investor. That means they've invested in a couple of other startups in the last 5 years, and then we'll give that evidence. Then you could be a CEO of your own company, and as a CEO or CTO or CMO, like 3 people can get on that visa with that same investment amount, and then that would then give a status that could then lead to the EB1 extraordinary ability green card.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's the pathway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I understand the pathway, but what are the people who already did this violation?
I know.
Like, so because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't have the exposure. Like, what happens if I just monetize? It's just $100 or $200. They don't even think that it's gonna cause some problem. So, is there any way we can get over it, like stating that, hey, we don't know, and mistakenly we monetized or whatever it is? Is there anything we can do that?
Well,
and also,
you
John,
gotta hope.
sorry, one addition to that. So do we need to add that to the when we are doing the tax filings and all? So addition to that.
Well, the tax filings are just a different agency, so it doesn't matter, right? The question is, did you do it for work? So you can make money if it's not work, right? So for example, if you invest in Bitcoin or Apple or whatever, and you make a lot of money as an investor, you're not working at Apple. You're not working at Bitcoin. You could put your house up for Airbnb. That's also not work. That's passive, right? But we had this conversation with another guy that his boss, he was a ski instructor in Aspen. His boss had a car in Aspen and let him rent out the car like an Airbnb for cars, right? And so, the question was, well, but that's not your car. Are you working for this guy? How are you doing that? So still, it was passive, maybe, but the more that it's work, then it's work, right? And how they look at it is you're working without a visa, and even if you're doing it for little money, that means you're undercutting somebody that does that for a living in America. So you got to just hope that they don't care, but that's a dangerous way to go about it. And this is a real thing, right? Because with social media, we're used to posting. Like, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing right now. You're just posting on this stuff. But once it starts generating money, that's when it becomes more problematic.
Understood. And the one more question is, like, a lot of people ask, can I do business on H1B? Can I run a business? Can I be a CEO? Can I contribute?
Great question.
What's your take on it?
So it's the same thing and even more pronounced, right? So you can't work at it. You can own it. You can own and have somebody else work it. But then you're in the possibility, will they believe you, right? Remember is it real? It's like, is it believable that you have a development company and you're the CEO and you never did any work, right? And then they can scour and they can find some stuff out. So if somebody has a LinkedIn profile that says they're the CEO of a tech company, it's kind of hard to say they're not, right? And these aren't new issues, guys. These are the issues that are as old as visas are, right? And that's the deal. And that's why people want to go to green cards, right? Because a green card allows that. And a green card allows you to get work authorization when it's pending, right? So one of the interesting plays H1Bs are doing right now are moving into EB5s, because EB5, some of them are current, which it means with the initial filing, the 526, they can file their adjustment of status, and then within anywhere from 10 to 14, 15 months, which seems like forever, but it's a lot less than other EB green cards, they're going to get a work authorization card, which would allow them to do any of these things you're talking about. But then that requires this big investment, $800,000 investment. But it is a pathway. And we might see some things where they get rid of these priority dates. That's the problem. The priority dates are what's killing folks from India, is because an EB2 and EB3 is 12 to 15 years, right? That's just crazy. So that's where the IEP leads you to the EB1, and within a couple of years you can do that, or if you can get the money for the EB5. So we look at these alternatives all the time to try to help people file into them, but I haven't found a great answer on how to tell you what you're thinking about isn't going to end up coming back to get you. I don't think it always does get people, but it could. and that's the what they would say if they did look at it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Ram, what's the next question?
So John, this question is mainly for students.
Okay.
So these days we are seeing a lot of students coming from India and from other countries also.
Yeah.
And a lot of F1 students.
Sure.
Like this year we got some 100K of students to USA.
Nice.
And some of the students are knowingly or unknowingly committing to some mistakes and getting to jails and getting penalized and courts and all that, doing that. So how does this affect them in the future, like when they're on H1B or when they're going for stamping in India, or when they're applying for green card in the future? So how does these cases going to affect them?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So students are into social media, probably bigger numbers than anybody else are. It's definitely a younger person's world. They're natives to it, right? And you can get quite a following, and it's the same issue, right? But it's really no different than working off campus delivering pizza. I mean, it's the same problem, and that's always been a problem for students. So on an F1, you can work for the university, you can work at entities that are located on the university. Want to make sure that they're good, but that's legal to do that under an F1. And then, as you know, OPT or CPT, curricular practical training, gives you the ability to work with permission from the university. And an OPT, you can actually do it before you graduate, but it's not always a good idea because you only get it for a year. Unless you're STEM, then you get it 3. But those are the 3 ways to be able to work, and they're pretty limited. I mean, once you get to the CPT, you got to get what type of jobs there. It's got to make sense, and OPT as well. So it's not like you can just do anything. And we're seeing probably more than ever in the last couple of years, a lot of focus on, did you maintain your status, right? Again, been doing this 30 years. Nobody cared about that not very long ago. But in the last 3 years, probably, it's been a big focus on prove that you were in status on your CPT, which is really weird because that many times the petitioner isn't the CPT company, right? So you have to go back and try to, somebody that you'd work for a little bit. And there's nightmares out there that, of people that they get denied that the OPT wasn't legitimate for what reason. Only they lose their job, then they're out of here. So staying compliant is very important for students. Talk to your international student services to really get clear, what can I do and what can I do. And they're pretty good at helping you, but lawyers can tell you too.
Right. Adding up to that, some people for fun committing some shoplifting or else credit card back charging, and some people got caught.
DUI.
Some people got
DUIs.
or DUI. DUI. So they got tickets. They were behind the bars. They came out and continuing their education. But what are the consequences they are going to face in future?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So guys, really know that not all crimes are bad, and not all crimes lift to the elevation of being a removable offense or an offense that bars entry. Okay. So first of all, it has to be a conviction. Not merely being charged with it doesn't matter as far as immigration purposes. However, it can matter if you're trying to re-enter or leave the country and come back, because they'll see a charge is pending there, and the consulates won't let you back in. Okay, so stay in America until you get it resolved. Don't leave for Christmas and then try to come back in. I've seen that nightmare where we actually had to help attorneys do a plea bargain with somebody in another country. And which was very difficult to do. So the level of crime that is a barrier to entry or deportable is either a felony or a misdemeanor that has certain elements. Number one, is the punishment more than 1 year? Okay. Now, it's important to know punishment isn't just jail time. It can be probation, right? Which can be called a deferred sentence, can be called a suspended sentence, but they have to. It has to have that level if it's a misdemeanor. Okay. So what does that mean? What that means is that DUIs are a prime example, because DUIs many times are victimless crimes. The person doing them isn't a bad person. They just had a little too much to drink. They weren't like going out and trying to rob somebody or do something like that, but they get caught, and it is a crime. And in some states, that punishment is always over a year, right? California lucky to get out from less than 3 years of probation. That would be a barrier to entry. Other states, you might be able to negotiate to a year, but not more than a year, right? And then that would be okay. DUIs are kind of on the edge right now in general. They used to look at it like I was looking at it. We see some people looking at like they're all bad. So just don't get a DUI. But if you do, it may not be over. The only drug-related charge that has any chance of not being a barrier to entry is very, very small amounts of marijuana. Any other drug is automatic out there. Then there's a thing that they call moral turpitude. These are like fraud-based ones, right? So that's where you could get in trouble if you lied on an immigration application and they find that was fraud. And we thought the Trump administration was going to try to use that to start revoking people's citizenship. No one had ever thought about revoking citizenship before, but there was some discussion of going back and micro-analyzing green card applications, H1Bs, trying to find something, and then pulling American citizen away from Americans. I'd always said for years, you know, you can be found guilty of treason and hung or shot, but you'll die as an American. And then out of nowhere came this, you know, revocation of American citizenship, but that never happened. But you know, but that would have been the way they would have done it. Yeah, well, we had a pretty anti-immigrant flair for a minute. Hopefully we don't get back to that, but that's where that sort of mentality came from.
Got it.
But that's how you look at crimes. They're not all bad. If you're being convicted and you have a criminal attorney, make sure that criminal attorney is talking to an immigration attorney, right? It's hard to do it after the fact, but we've helped them many times negotiate plea bargains. Maybe they do a little bit more community service, or they pay a little fine or whatever to keep that punishment down underneath that line. And so that they, you know, that they wouldn't end up getting deported. And we see many times the prosecutors are like, yeah, we see, we don't think the crime that was committed for this first time offender, you know, means that they should get deported. And look, when we're looking at Indians, there's not a lot of criminality, but the DUI is a possibility, you know, and so those happen from time to time.
Thanks for bearing with us. And little out of the topic, just wanted to know about you.
Know about me?
Okay, from your childhood.
Yes. Well, I think one of the more interesting things about me is I have a wife, Pam. I have 6 wonderful children. Gabby is our head of client relations and client success in my office. John is one of our marketing guys that does a lot of video production for us. We have a YouTube channel, and we've been doing some social media, not to the extent you guys are, but you know, limited, but still really good. And he does great stuff on that. So you can go check out Online Visas or Online Visas YouTube channel and see some stuff. An interesting fact that not a lot of people know is that my great-great-grandfather was an immigration attorney. And he went to law school with FDR, the guy that became president, at Columbia around the turn of the century. And his claim to fame, his name was Abraham Rockmore. And Abe worked with a group called the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, right? And he was their lawyer. And it's really interesting, you know, America went to fight against the Nazis in World War II and really stop the genocide that had happened to the Jews, which are our people. And not surprisingly, knowing America is like, well, we'll fight to stop it, but we don't want them coming here. And so what you had was, you know, thousands of homeless, poor people that had lost everything, and America didn't want them to come in. So my uncle, my great-great-grandfather was very instrumental in getting European refugees over there. Now, immigration at that time was really interesting because he would go from senators and congressmen to try to lobby a law, a bill for a particular family, right? Like in order to get in, you got to have a congressman pass a law and then let you come in. And so he was, and I found some really interesting content on him where he was speaking to Congress in 1947. So this is 2 years after World War II, about the passage of the Naturalization Act, which became really the basis of the INA, which is what is current immigration.
Right.
So it's the current immigration that has the great numbers that we have now. And the process is, although frustrating, a lot less frustrating than getting Congress to pass a law for your family, right? So he's really sort of the grandfather of immigration as we know it today. So a reason that all of us are now over here, and that's kind of cool.
So you're carrying the family legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Nice. Good to know.
Continuing on with our family is fun as well.
And after like associating with you, or after meeting you, I did some research and got to know about you personally, that you did a lot of things and recognized by UN.
Yeah.
So what is that experience? So what all other things you do other than running a law firm?
Well, you know, I've been an immigration attorney since the very beginning because I was a rugby player, right? And
you're a rugby player, nice.
Yeah. So rugby is one of the many, you know, English or British sports that, you know, like cricket in India, you know, rugby in New Zealand, South Africa, and other places. So as an American rugby player, we always had, you know, a bunch of foreigners on the team, you know, Islanders and all these other guys. So I went on tour with an all-star team to New Zealand in 1994 in my first year of practicing law. I started practicing law in 93. And really what I was doing is just trying to do any types of cases for any type of law to pay for my rugby habit, because rugby wasn't professional and I had to raise money to go around the world, even though I was a pretty good player. And so when we were in New Zealand, South Africa was there. South Africa ends up winning the World Cup in 1995, and these were the same players. But there was they had just made it professional, right? And the reason they made it professional is that nobody would play South Africa during apartheid, right? So they just played amongst themselves, and they professionalized it. Well, New Zealand was the best in the world, and they're mostly just laborers, right? But the English didn't want to professionalize it, because if you're a good rugby player in England, they'd give you a job at a bank or whatever, and you wouldn't do anything. You get this great salary, and it'd last forever, right? So they always fought it. They fought it. And finally, the New Zealanders and the South Africans said, we've had enough. We need to make this a real pro sport, because the Olympics was even had pros by this point in the early 90s. So it goes pro. And I'm over there, and my teammate is full of guys. My team was full of guys that weren't Americans. So I did the very first green card for a rugby player. And then that's what launched my immigration. So all these rugby players from around the country would call me up, and we just start doing that. So immigration's an interesting body of law that if you're licensed in any state, you can practice in all states. Right. So I started building a practice out of Norman, Oklahoma, which is a 100,000 person town in an underpopulated state, right? And so, but people start contacting us. Now, I had another friend that was starting a tech company in Dallas, and a tech company at that time meant web design. But web design was really complex in the 90s, and we had $1 million contracts with like Marriott, and we did the first transaction processing for DFW Airport. We were really at a cutting edge. So we launched a website called onlinevisas.com. And I used it so that I could travel back and forth to Dallas and be able to work in on my laptop with that deal. And what was really interesting in 1998 was you could still get a name like onlinevisas.com. And what websites look like, especially in the legal profession, were just text. Like, you know, I'm a good lawyer. Here's my face, Here's what school I went to. We made probably the first interactive one, and you could see what the visa was, and you could read about it, and you could click on it, and then email us, right? Seems pretty pedestrian at the time, but most lawyers at the time didn't want to give information out. Hire me, pay me money, and I'll tell you what to do. So that took off, and we started landing clients like Tyson Foods, Bell Laboratories. Bell Labs didn't want to go all the way to New York to see their attorneys from New Jersey. They could communicate with us over that. So we started launching that. We got some awards by the ABA and things like that. And that was where that practice went. Well, so I took on another interesting thing on behalf of these Native Americans who were held as slaves before the Civil War and kicked out of their tribes. And I went to this all the way up through the Supreme Court, and over a 24-year period, won a really massive case to get these people back into their tribal nations. And we got some notoriety for that. And the UN gave us the Human Rights Award for working on those series of cases.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to hear. So, John, many people have perception that, let's say, you are practicing from Normal, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So, let's say employers across US, like some employers might be watching our live from New York, or from California, or from Chicago.
Yeah.
They might like to work with you, but they might be in a perception that you are licensed or you are working from only Oklahoma or for the state of Texas.
Right.
So, are you licensed in all the 50 states, or else are you
I do
is your team
immigration. I do immigration and have done immigration in all 50 states and almost every civilized country in the world, or industrial country in the world. We do. We have a lot more clients in New York and LA and San Francisco than we do here.
So
we hardly have any here, to be honest.
Awesome. So anyone can reach out to you
100%.
To file their petition on behalf of their employees. Okay, that's a great one. Okay, going back to questions. Another important thing is, like, many people have this question, like, until some extent, people are like, okay, I'm very much interested in electrical engineering, or else I'm very much interested in industrial engineering, or else some mechanical engineering, or else civil engineering. At one point, over the period of 5 years or 6 years, they might realize that for some reason, why I'm not making enough money. And IT people are like, people in IT are making like 6 figures, are a very good amount of money. And why shouldn't I switch? They might learn some skill and they try to move to IT. So what is the chance, like what is the percentage of approval chance? Like, is it good to go, or like, did you handle these kind of cases in the past, and what is the success rate?
Of course. So what you're talking about is changing
mainstream,
your type of profession, right?
Yes, sir.
So the thing to remember about the H1B is it's not based on experience most of the time.
Right.
Now, I say that with a caveat, and I'll come back to it, but it's based on your education. Right. So the H1B is based on, is there a job that is specialty occupation? And I told you about how they've limited those to what's in the OOH. And does that job require a university degree? Okay.
Right.
Now, an employer never looks at it that way.
Right.
Employer's going to be like, how many years experience do you have in JavaScript? Right. They never look at it like that. They want real life experience, but that's not how the visa is designed. Right. So there's been some litigation on those specialty occupations, and a really cool case came down in 2020. Remember, I told you 2020 is when immigration got hit really hard. Our friend Jonathan Wasden was the litigator, you know, for these cases, a lot of them, but there was a few other guys. But what they came back and so immigration tried to say that the degree required specialization, like it had to be a computer science engineering degree, right? Or a computer engineering degree, as opposed to electrical engineering degree. Immigration came back and said, no, engineering is the degree, right? So if you have an engineering degree and the job you want is an engineering job, you could go from being an electrical engineer or a civil engineer to an IT engineer, right? A computer engineer. You could do that today. You couldn't have done it before 2020. They would have said no, but you need to do that. But you have to know how to design the job to the degree you have. Now, the way, when I said it wasn't all the time, it had experience. So there's a way to use experience in a job to make it equivalent to a university degree. Because remember, it's a university degree. So for 4 years of university degree, there's a 3-to-1 ratio, meaning 3 years of experience in a profession is equal to 1 year of university. So if somebody goes to school for a year and drops out and then works 9 years, that would be equivalent to a degree. If somebody gets an associate's degree and does it, or if they get a degree that's just unrelated and they've worked enough within the field, then experts will come in and those experts will evaluate both the schooling and the classes and the work and come up with this ratio and rely on those. So yeah, we do them a lot. And many times we got to fit the round peg into the square hole.
Awesome.
So John, for example, so these people who are, let's say if I'm currently working on civil engineering and I don't get a chance to do a degree, but I do a certifications or online courses. So will those add any value when we are switching career?
The expert would have to evaluate what that program was to determine if it was university level, right? And a lot of times it's time, right? So here's a funny thing. There are degrees out there that are not 4-year degrees. They're 3-year, right? Australia has 3 years degrees. Some other places do. So they have to then find 3 more years of experience someplace many times, unless they use the E3 visa, which is the Australian version of the H1B, and they'd have to consulate process it, and only consular process through Australia. So there's, for all the rules, there's an exception, right? And these are the ways to look at some of these things. But the general thing is, is it enough university, and is it in enough right direction, and will somebody authorize it or evaluate it?
Gotcha. Awesome. So next question, it's completely different. About consular process. What are the advantages of having consular process? For instance, let's say I'm working for some company, some ABC company, and my company is not filing H1B to me. They might be pushing me like, we're going to file you next year. But I found an outside employer who's going to file me a H1B on consular process. So I don't want to move to that company, but I'm just utilizing that opportunity to get my H1B from them. So if my H1B got picked up and approved in consular process, can I wait for 3 years here in the ABC company without transferring that H1B? But once if I get the H1B here, I'm going to keep it. If not, I'm going to take that consular process H1B and go to stamping to India once it is approved, and I come back to United States, work for them. So can we delay that once it is approved, as consular H1B is work like, until you get your H1B stamping, they won't be active, right?
It won't be active, but it will have been an H1B, and it'll count against the cap, right? So that's good. So that happens, right? So what that means is you could file another H1B after that and not have to go through the lottery again.
Yes.
Even though you haven't got it stamped. That's the key, right? That's the takeaway there. So you could, that's the value of it, right?
That's the value of consular process.
But if you do go consular processing, stamping are the same term, right? So if you go get stamped at a consulate and enter the United States, now you've changed to that company. That's who you're working for. So you can't just go back to that other company again. You've now changed, your status is now this H1B, and that's what you're authorized to do. So if you wanted to work for the previous company under date, say, how I could see this play out is the previous company allows you to be on OPT. You're on STEM OPT. They don't want to mess with the immigration, whatever, if you run out, you run out. But you go and stamp and come back, they would then have to transfer your H1B to you, but you'd have an H1B that you could transfer.
Right, we can transfer. So which is a good thing. One of the benefit from consular process. When
the benefit of getting the H1B is having an H1B that's not subject to the cap, right? That's the tricky part about this, that other employees don't have to go through a cap. That's what makes it weird.
Got it. So one more quick announcement to the audience. So I'm repeating it again. So if you have any questions related to immigration, Jon's law firm, like Online Visas or Velie Law Firm, offers 30-minute free consultation on your case. So you can feel free to reach out to them, have a call, set up a call, and once you're free, happy with it, if you want to proceed further with them, you can always go with them. So that is one of the offer. They're very generous to offer to Melody Mocktail, especially us. So make use of this, just in case if we miss to answer your question in the live session, because we are pretty much prioritized the most regular questions, most questions we receive more often, so that it will be beneficial for all of them, right? So that's why we are addressing this. So Ram, what is your question next?
So Jon, from past 6 months, we are hearing this common word called layoff. So what are the important steps that we need to take after getting laid off, other than applying for a job? Let's say if I didn't get a job in 60 days, that grace period. So what are the important steps that I need to take?
Excellent. Excellent question, Ron. So what occurred in the last 8 days of the Obama administration in 2017 was a flurry of positive immigration legislation. One of those was the 60-day grace period, right? Before the 60-day grace period, if you lost your job, you're out of status, right? Done. And if you get another one, you would have to go consular process. And we've already talked about how difficult consular processing is. Even if you have it approved, they may delay it. So this gives you 60 days to find and file another job. Now, remember that for every H-1B, you have to file an LCA and have a notice of posting. So 7 days to 10 days of that 60 days are going to be taken up doing that. So you really have, say, 50 days to find somebody to file it. And you got to get the I-129 in that time frame. Now, you could file a visitor visa, a B1, B2, and that could buy some time. And then you could file it after that. And a B1, B2, they're not going to turn around for 3 months. You're not going to hear anything.
Yes. So can we stay legally with the receipt notice?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay.
But the minute you go to the B1, B2, you're not jumping from H to H, right? So you want to hold that back. Now, they also have this thing that you could get an EAD card if you do that. But again, that's going to cut that H tie. So what's really cool about the H, unlike other visas, is you don't have to wait for the approval to start working on the second job. Right. You just need the receipt notice if it's substantially the same job. So you don't want to jump from being the software developer to being an electrical engineer. That's probably not close enough. Right. Even if you could get your engineering degree to work in both. Right. But you want to stay in the same profession doing that. But then you can jump again as long as the middle one got approved. So here's what to watch out for. Just getting anybody to file for you if they're an unapprovable H1B, either in the job or the company. Remember, we talked about too small of a company, doesn't have any other employees, stuff like that. That's going to trigger an RFE. If you then say, I'm just going to withdraw this one because I got the other one, it'll end up revoking them all. And then you could still have the visa, but then you'd have to consular process because you'd have this moment of having worked with that authorization in the middle. So it's really important that all of them get approved and those sort of things. But the takeaway is you have the 60 days. Right. That's the takeaway that wasn't there before.
Okay.
So getting I-140 approved, will that help in any way?
Like there is there was some statement in the recent announcement of USCIS that in some cases we can extend our stay if we were approved with I-140.
Yes. So that thing is the availability of an EAD for exigent or emergency sort of scenarios. That's where laid off for the job, I got an I-140, I can file for this EAD. EADs take a while to get, and it doesn't give you any other status, but you got the EAD and you can work, right? So that's I think that's the fallback at the end, is to file that if you can't find the other job within 60 days or the visitor visa.
Awesome. And I think we took a lot of time.
Yeah.
John, thank you very much for answering our questions very patiently. And I really appreciate your time for taking it during the weekend, that on a Sunday, instead of taking that time for your family. I really appreciate for that. And one more thing I just wanted to ask, or I just wanted to hear from you, that what are the services, like, let's say I'm an employer, why should I choose you as an attorney? What are the services you are doing other than other notable attorneys in the market? Because I know you personally, but I want other people, our viewers, to know about you.
I think the best way to describe our advantages are what we call brand promises, right? So that's the promise we make our clients, that what you're going to get from us, our entire team, is these things, relationships, right? So we understand that, and again, why we're developing AI in the law is not to remove lawyers, but just to make lawyers better and faster. But you still need lawyers. You need to be able to call people when you're having a problem. You need to talk it through. Nothing has a simple answer that, it'd be like when you try to get your plane ticket changed by an automated deal. You're just like, I want to talk to the agent.
Right.
Let me talk to somebody. Right. So we're never going to replace that. So we have a large number of employees. There are about 5 different layers of people that can talk to you in our firm. I'm the lawyer, I'm the strategist, I have other lawyers, but I have case managers, and I have a head of production, and then we have finance people, and we have kind of customer service or sales related people. So there's always somebody that you can talk to that will, if they don't know the answer, that will get you the answer, and those sort of things. And we think that's one of the things that people complain about lawyers that are overworked and understaffed. And there's plenty of them, right? They fall asleep in their chairs at 3 o'clock at night. They have to go out and get the business, and they got to do the business. And I used to be there, but now we have a nice staff and good professional people, and we're all on the same, line. Here's where we want to do it. So it starts with relationships. The next thing is, and you can probably tell, this is what I just did with you guys, is strategy, right? I think there's a lot of lawyers in the immigration space that don't put any time into it. They will literally just take what their clients have and then they put it in there. And that's because in the high volume H1B world, everybody's dropping their prices to be able to do as many cases as they can. And I think quality suffers, and strategy is the first part. And ironically, that's what we kind of give away at the beginning. And the reason we're giving away strategy and why we're giving this, and I'm glad to give you on my my weekend, is because there's you got to build trust, right? And how I'm able to build trust is I do this every day with people. I'm sitting in my office in Oklahoma, but it doesn't matter. You can still see me. I can see you. But trust is based on knowledge, and it's based on engagement. Right. So does this person know what they're talking about, and are they going to be interested enough in my case to carry it through? Right. So we do that to do that. So that's strategy. And the strategy is built on knowledge, right? And then we have knowledge over 30 years, but in building our platform, we're able to capture more and more knowledge and have it there at our fingertips. So I have to do less work because I did more work on the front side to deliver me and my team the knowledge, right? And then the next is briefing. I told you we write briefs. We don't write a cover letter. We write a brief that identifies issues and answers them up front. We think that gives us a higher percentage of approval. And then the last is technology, right? And so nobody's developed a technological tool like we have because I've used them, right? We had to build a better one because the ones we bought weren't. I'm in our 3rd generation and about $2 million of development. I heard that you spent almost some millions of dollars on this product. I raised $1 million and I borrowed $1 million, so we're at about 2. But it still has some more to go. We're going to still keep growing it and growing it and growing it, and it's a living, breathing thing, right? So that's the neatest thing about it. We're gonna make everybody around us better and faster, and with that allows us to create value, right? So we have a discounted rate. We think that our pricing is more competitive and below most of the other. This is
my follow-up question. Because you built a big platform, people might be thinking like he might charge a lot of money. But your prices are very competitive with the market prices, right?
We're below most experienced attorneys. I'm not saying there's not somebody out there that'll do it for next to nothing, either non-attorney.
But you're beating them.
But we're beating almost everybody, and we have some volume discounts for enterprise clients that want to do a bunch of them. And then we carry that over to the perm as well. So we know that, you bring somebody in, you might want them to have a green card. We have a great perm team, got an attorney with 27 years experience and about 5 support staff of that, in addition to our big H1B team, and in addition to our extraordinary abilities and our IEPs and stuff like that. So we're pretty robust and we're pretty diverse. So some people say, well, we just specialize in this. What we specialize is in business immigration. And so there are successes we've had in the EB1 and O1 field that we brought into the H1B to have more successes. And we think too many of the others are just trying to put in the bare minimum stuff and either get them denied or kick back on RFEs. We want to keep our 100% approval rating right now.
Okay, awesome. Do our viewers or followers get any special consideration in the terms of money or priority?
Absolutely. We will give them. Melody Mocktail. We'll give them the discounted corporate rate if they come in. So we're charging $750 for H1Bs for the corporate clients. So we think that falls in below the lower $800 to about $1,200 range is where where we think the other good attorneys are at. There are some obviously higher than that. But we would be glad to share that to your viewers. Make sure they tell us who they are. We do have an individual rate if they came in at $2,500. So it's a significant savings from that. And so we'll be glad to help them at that rate.
Okay. If they say Melody Mocktail, their fees is only $750, including RFE, right?
RFEs are free.
Oh,
with
free.
Exception. Yeah, no, with exceptions. So the exceptions are going to be things like they haven't given us their maintenance of status, or we know it's going to get an RFE because there's this issue, right? So we have about 5 things that are pretty clear about, if you're being investigated, we're not going to do that for free. But the ones we do for free are the ones that are the classic identifiable ones, and we've got a pretty low rate of getting them. So that's why we sort of eat that cost. That makes sense?
Awesome.
So John, for example, if I'm not comfortable or not satisfied with my employer's attorney, so I can individually choose you as my attorney, right?
That's a difficult question, right? Because an H1B is being represented by, 2 groups are represented in an H1B, the employer, which is called the petitioner, and the employee, which is called the beneficiary, right? So you have to have signatures by the employer, right? You can't, the beneficiary can't put in an H1B without the employer. So, but we do, look, we inherit cases all the time at the RFE level, and when people aren't happy, that's just how we're led into the company. So obviously the company would have to sign off on it, but we're glad to talk to any company and any individual about, how they're going about immigration. And we're offering, again, not just a strategy on a case-by-case basis, but we can do a free strategy for companies on how are you going to face immigration? What are you looking at? What are your worries? What have been the concerns and problems you've had? Maybe you've had a bunch of RFEs in this one level. How can you stop that? Maybe you don't know why things aren't working, and we're glad to have that conversation.
Right. Awesome. It's a super productive call. We did not expect it that this is gonna go this good.
Oh, great.
But thank you for patiently answering each and every question very clearly, that each and every individual can understand, even if they have not much IQ. So thank you very much, John. I really appreciate your time, and enjoy your weekend, rest of the weekend. And I know you will regain more strength for tomorrow.
For sure. Well, it's great to be on Melody Mocktail. But you guys are fantastic. What a great following you have. It's a wonderful thing you've got going here. So I'm very honored to be a guest on it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
See you again.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye now.